Hi there. In this session, it's my aim to get you associating and using the Dorian mode with a chord. Having learnt how to play the Dorian mode, it only seems right that we should now continue on and have a look at the intervals contained within this mode. And along our way, I'd like to introduce you to another type of triad, arpeggio, and chord. Hopefully you've been exploring the Dorian mode in different keys, but just to keep things familiar, I'm going to remain in the key of C major, so I'll base my examples and exercises using D Dorian. Okay, as we've learnt about any scale and to better understand the intervals contained within it, we can number the notes in sequence. So doing this with the notes that make up the mode of D Dorian, we'd have D as 1, E as 2, F is 3, G is 4, A is 5, B is 6, C is 7, and 8 is just an octave repeat of the first note. Now, applying what we've learnt about chord tones, which remember are just the first, third, fifth and seventh notes of any scale, from our sequence the chord tones of D Dorian are the notes D, F, A and C. And if we were to play these chord tones together at the same time, we'd quite obviously create a chord. This type of chord is referred to in music as a minor seventh. And because in this instance the root note is a D, we'd name this particular chord a D minor seventh. So, another connection we can make is that all chord tones of the Dorian mode spell out a minor seventh chord. Hear how once again we can outline the sound and character of this particular chord just using the notes from D Dorian. Hopefully by now you understand that by taking the first 3 chord tones of a scale creates a triad, and in this instance the D, F and A creates what we call a minor triad. As the root notes are D, we'd call this particular group of notes a D minor triad, and playing just these 3 notes together at the same time would create the chord of a D minor. So, filling in some more music theory basics, the notes of a minor triad played at the same time create a minor chord. Now, if we look at the intervals contained within our D minor triad, you'll soon understand how it gets its name. In music, the interval between the D and F is what's called a minor third. And just looking at the relative position of these 2 notes on the fingerboard, it's important to remember that you'll always find the interval of a minor third 1 string up and 2 frets back like this. So, we now know a D to an F is a minor third, and luckily for us we can move this shape anywhere on the fingerboard to give us another minor third interval, for example this time between the notes of B and D. As always, learning how to play the same intervals in different ways can only benefit you. So here's a different shape that you can use to spell out a minor third. From any root note, a minor third will always be found on the same string and up 3 frets like this. Moving on to the next interval, D to the A, hopefully you're beginning to recognise this as the interval of a fifth. See, it's the shape we've already encountered, up 1 string and up 2 frets from our root note. Okay, comparing this minor triad to another triad we know about, the major triad, the only difference between the 2 is the fact that, unsurprisingly, the minor triad contains a minor third. And the major triad contains a major third. So, to turn a major triad, in this case a D major triad like this, into a D minor triad, all we have to do is flatten, or move down by 1 fret, the third in the triad. So, root, third, fifth, and then flattening the third, we now have a D minor triad. And it's basically this flattening of the third that separates the two distinct sounds of major and minor. Now, adding the fourth chord tone, which is the note of C, to our D minor triad, has the effect of extending a D minor chord into a D minor 7th chord. Some of you may have seen or come across these minor 7th chords before, but as always it's worth remembering that this particular chord of a D minor 7th can be written down in a number of different ways. Hear how adding this extra note to the chord helps to soften the distinct sound of the minor triad, and we call it a minor 7th because the note we've added, in this case a C, is the 7th note of D Dorian. Okay, I appreciate that I've covered a lot of music theory there, but don't panic. Feel free to repeat the session content until you fully understand it. When you're ready, let's move on, as I'd like to show you some exercises using the arpeggios of these minor and minor 7th chords. Remember that in order to play an arpeggio, all we need to do is play up and down through the chord tones used to create the chords we want to play arpeggios of. So, with that in mind, here's a shape you can use to play an arpeggio of an ordinary minor chord. And, as we're going to start it from a D, this is a D minor arpeggio. So, it goes root, D on your index finger like this, then up a minor third to the F using the little finger, onto the next string up to play the 5th, which is an A using the 3rd finger, and finally to finish play the octave D by rolling your 3rd finger across onto the G string like this. Okay, let's now play this D minor arpeggio along with the metronome. I'll play it up and down 3 times, each time remembering to play the root and octave notes twice. Okay, after 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. By now, you've probably already guessed what I'm just about to say. So, here's another shape you can use to voice a D minor arpeggio on the bass. Okay, this time start with your 3rd finger on the root note like this, then continue up through the minor triad, first to the minor 3rd played using the index finger, then recalling the shape of a major 3rd played on the same string, we can proceed from the F up to the 5th, which is an A. Don't overstretch though in an attempt to reach this note. Move your fretting hand up the neck just a little to make this jump easier if you need to. And to finish, all we do is roll our little finger over onto the next string up to play the octave D like this. Okay, now it's your turn. Playing along with the metronome, let's play this other D minor arpeggio shape. Again, I'll repeat it up and down 3 times as before. Ready? 1, 2, 3, 4. Finally, let's use these 2 minor arpeggio shapes and expand on them by this time including the minor 7th, which in this instance is the note of C, giving us a shape that we can then use to play a D minor 7th arpeggio. So, recalling our first shape, play up to the 5th like this, and instead of going to the octave, this time play the minor 7th, or C using the index finger like this. So up and down. Now play along with me using the metronome, and as before, I'll repeat this D minor 7th arpeggio 3 times. Okay? 1, 2, 3, 4. Lastly, here's the other minor 7th arpeggio shape for you to learn. So, here's our D minor arpeggio, and once again to play a D minor 7th arpeggio, all we have to do is replace the octave D with the 4th chord tone, or as it's known, the minor 7th, which is the note of C. So here's the shape: D, F, A, and C. I like to think of this particular minor 7th arpeggio shape as creating an elongated diamond shape on the fingerboard, and never be afraid to use visual techniques such as these to help you learn. I mean, if it works for you, then that's what's important. Okay, again, let's use this other minor 7th arpeggio shape to spell out a D minor 7th chord as an arpeggio with the metronome. Once again, I'll repeat the arpeggio up and down 3 times. After 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. Good job. Now, that's an awful lot of information that I've just shared with you, but I'm confident in the fact that you'll work on practicing these minor and minor 7th arpeggios. Please remember that you can move these shapes anywhere on the fingerboard. Say, if you started a minor 7th arpeggio from the note of C, for example, I hope you realise that you'd be playing a C minor 7th arpeggio, and that by doing so, you'd be voicing a C minor 7th chord, 1 note at a time. And if that amount of knowledge recall wasn't enough on its own, you can then backtrack a little and work out that this C minor 7th chord was actually created from the chord tones of a C Dorian mode. Phew! So, before next time, practice and practice the Dorian mode and minor 7th arpeggios that its chord tones create. Be creative, and I'll see you soon.